This week, Don Pezet of ITProTV rejoins us. We're going to talk about the supervisor portal, but more importantly, the business aspect of it and some of the needs and drivers that people may have for that service, how it's built and deployed and consumed. It's going to be a lot of fun. In the startup security news, defining traits of leaders, the realities of stealth mode, assessing emotional intelligence, and updates from Attivo Networks, CloudZero, Akami, Shift Left, Security Scorecard, and more on this episode of Startup Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show about security startups, how to secure your startup, and advice for security startups. It's Startup Security Weekly.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by... Are you looking for a career where you can make a real difference? Accenture Security is looking for passionate, creative minds to tackle some of the biggest security threats facing us today. Innovative thinkers who want to outmaneuver cybercriminals. They're hiring specialists across the spectrum, from security strategy to cyber defense, digital identity, and application security, helping to deliver holistic solutions. If you want to use next-generation technologies and global resources to change the future of security, visit accenture.com/security careers. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. ITProTV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream ITProTV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/startup security and use the code SS30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about ITProTV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Welcome, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. It is, in fact, Friday the 13th, October 13th, 2017. This is episode 59 even, and I'm reporting from lovely Rhode Island on this creepy Friday. I should have had my Jason mask that I would have worn for the show. My kids and I love Halloween. Joining us on the lines via Skype is the sand hobo himself, Mr. Michael Santarcangelo. We got that in there finally. When we can
I like it.
When we can get our teleprompter to work, you know, it works. It works good when it works, or not.
Funny.
And I just found out, Michael, that you're an aficionado of everyday carry items, which is kind of interesting.
Yes, I am. Bob, dude, I live in the South, right? I mean, you want to talk about pickup trucks? Want to talk about EDC and things like that. No, I like them, and I'm not a snob about it. So I like cheap stuff that's functional and works really well, that you could put an edge on it. But I mean, I know its place. I like stuff that you can carry in polite ways, and then I mean, there's just some great brands out there.
You know, I've been wanting to do a segment on Paul's Security Weekly. I think would be the most fitting about everyday carry items for the security professional. We'd have to put a little bit of a security twist on it, but a lot of the things that I've kind of switched to recently, I mean, right down to my wallet and such, I think I did one on the Stogie Geek show about everyday carry items because that's more of like a cigar leisure kind of luxury and leisure aspect on things. But you and I should collaborate. Maybe we should do a segment together on Paul's Security Weekly. I think it would be kind of a different, kind of technical segment.
I think it's a great idea. And the number of places we find ourselves, especially too, we're on the road, something's always breaking. And we find those things are more useful than not more frequently than I think we'd expect. So yeah, and it'd be great to hear what other people are doing and what they found. That's how I found some of the EDC stuff I carry. That's got tools and not quite multi-tools, but it's from talking to other people in the industry and like watching what they do. And I'm like, wait, I never thought about using it that way. Okay, cool. I'm in, right? And it's you pick it up and run with it. So it's all about sharing. It's community strong, EDC.
I have like announcements and stuff too, but I can't read them because my teleprompter's not working. Someone owes us some money or something. As much time as we spend talking about this stupid teleprompter, I feel like they should be writing us a check. Something. I'm trying to. Anyway, we got a webcast coming up. It's really awesome. I tell you all about it, except my teleprompter is broken. While we're doing that, let's introduce Don Pezet. Don Pezet is from ITProTV. He's got a deep background in training and in IT consulting and security as well. Don, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Paul. Always fun to be on the show and talk to you and Michael.
Absolutely. So, Don, you're a Star Trek aficionado. And I wanted to ask you...
Amongst other things.
Amongst other things. But I wanted to ask you if you've seen the new Seth MacFarlane show, The Orville.
You know, I haven't, and not because I don't like sci-fi, but because I don't think I've ever seen something Seth MacFarlane did that I liked. Like, I just...
well,
Family Guy has always been painful.
Well, Family Guy takes place here in Quahog, Rhode Island, which is a fictitious place, but it does take place in Rhode Island. And it's very different from anything Seth has done in the past, I can say. So you might like it. You might like it. It's kind of it's Star Trek-like, Star Trek-esque, except more real characters and plot lines. It's hard to describe. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Kind of like Galaxy Quest, which is a pretty funny movie.
Yeah, it's not over the top comedy. Like it's not like, what is that British one when they're on the ship like the entire time? There's two guys on the ship. What is that called? I can't think of it.
Two British guys on a ship. That sounds like an exciting show right there.
Well, it's British humor, so I mean, you know.
Was that like Red Dwarf or?
Red Dwarf was one, and what's the other one? I looked it up the other day. If you search for British sci-fi comedy, there's only so many. Which talk about category and category creation. Hyperdrive is the other one. Hyperdrive. It's not over-the-top comedy like that. So, anyway, that has nothing to do... Well, I guess it does relate to startups because he's kind of carving out a new category in sci-fi comedy, based in the U.S. and intermixing kind of real-world plot lines with comedy and science fiction. So, for those reasons, I thought it was really interesting. All right, let's see if my wiki's updated so I can do some announcements, maybe? Hold on. Rather, did you update the wiki? Okay, thank you. So we have a webcast coming up with Signal Sciences on Thursday, November 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Join myself, Joff Thayer, Zane Lackey, for an application security discussion. Zane will share practical lessons learned during his tenure at Etsy on the most effective application security techniques in today's increasingly rapid world of application creation and delivery. Visit securityweekly.com/Signal Sciences and register today. Lots of fun. Joff and I are going to talk about the problems in defending modern web applications, and Zane's going to talk about some of the solutions. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Michael, you had some lines of questioning for Don Pezet to kick off today's show. So why don't you lead us into it?
Yeah, well, and Don and I started talking about this before we went on camera, but I've noticed during our live reads where we talk about ITPro.tv, we always say, oh, and check out the new supervisor portal. And so I said to Don, hey, tell me more about that. And I thought, you know what, actually, everybody might be kind of interested in that. And then Don, I'll set it up this way. But you said, when you guys started ITPro.tv, you started it focused on consumers. And if I'm recalling correctly, too, like you looked at certifications and things like that. Clearly, you've expanded out and plenty there for us to talk about. But tell us then a little bit about that progression to the supervisor portal. And then what is it? Like, why is somebody listening to us right now? Why should they go check it out? What's kind of exciting about it for them? So we'll build up into it, but take us wherever you think the story starts best.
Sure. So, in the early days of the company, my business partner, Tim, and I, we came up with an idea, and the idea was a solution to a problem. The problem was training is expensive, difficult to get. There's a lot of people who couldn't go out and get the training they wanted. So we wanted to solve that problem, and we were somewhat naive. I think everybody who starts a new business is at least somewhat naive. And initially, we were just catering to the consumer, the individual person. So you've got one person who wants to learn an IT topic or wants to learn more about security, and they want to get training. And that's who we addressed. And it turned out that we were, kind of missing an entire market by doing that. And, another easier example is when we first launched the business, we were really only thinking about Americans. And so, we had this website, or not even Americans, people in the United States. We just figured, hey, we're a U.S. company. We'll sell to people here in the U.S. And I think it was like day 3 that our website was live. We got a support ticket from someone saying, hey, I'm trying to sign up and I can't because on the payment form, I have to pick a state and I live in Canada. We don't have states. And so we had to rush out a change to the site to start accepting foreign currency. And, now here we are 4 years later and 30% of our business is done with people outside of the U.S. So, imagine just chopping 30% off your revenues because you didn't think you could do business outside of your country. That's the kind of naivety that we had in the early days. But we recognize
what a good problem to have,
businesses.
though.
Yeah, huh?
That's a much better problem than the how come no one's signing up?
Yeah.
And that's not the only time that happened. Like accepting PayPal. We didn't accept PayPal in the beginning because we thought, hey, everybody's got a credit card. But it turns out there's a lot of people out there who are willing to pay with PayPal, but not with other currencies. And that's stuff we just didn't think about.
Interesting.
Don, I want to know a little bit about the shift because it's interesting. Is Michael and I and the rest of the gang, we talk about different business ideas or different things that we can do in our startups, in Security Weekly, and I get nervous when you're changing the audience that you're selling to. And IT Pro has started to do that. You sold to the consumer, but now you're selling to enterprise businesses. And so it completely changes the game. What were some of the early discussions like? Were there reservations about going to a new audience? And then what are you doing to kind of address the selling to a different market? So
what kind of started it was that we had people that would sign up with us and they would go through training to get started. We're talking about entry level stuff here. CompTIA A+, Net Plus, Security Plus, that kind of training where they show, hey, I know how to work with computers and I know the security fundamentals in theory to be able to get out there and protect myself. So they would learn the basics, they would go out and get a job, and then they didn't need us anymore. And that was that. And we viewed that as a success. It wasn't a negative thing. It was, hey, we just helped that person get a job. That's exactly what we're trying to do. But what we found was that they would go and get a job, and then they still needed to learn. They still needed more, right? They needed more information. They needed to get more advanced. And, hey, I don't need fundamentals and theories. I've got this Juniper firewall I've got to configure, or I've got to build a VPN tunnel between 2 different vendors, and I need to know how to do that. And that went well beyond what we were teaching just an average consumer. And we said, hey, we've got the space here. We've got the demand. Let's start creating content that's geared not towards getting a certification, getting a job, but actually improving your skill set so you're better at your job or being able to do more advanced things. And once we started doing that, what we found were these individuals that would start with us, they would go to a company, they would get a job, and then they would talk to the IT director and say, hey, I'm using ITProTV. It's working out really great. We should get this for all of the IT people. And so we started getting calls for corporate accounts. And that's what really opened our eyes and made us say, oh, wow, we need to be catering to these businesses. It's the same type of training, just more advanced. And so that was what started leading us into engaging with the corporate market. And we didn't worry about watering down our content because we were still creating that entry-level content, and those people would then transition to the advanced content, which is what the companies were asking for. So it really kind of worked out well.
I love it because most businesses have to create a product and then go attract a market to that product. You already had the product, and the market came to you. Dude, that's an awesome place to be, right? Doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah, and it's worked out well. What we're seeing now, though, and what led to the supervisor portal, is that we could train these individuals who were motivated, who wanted to be trained. But in the security world, we're recognizing now that there's a lot of people out there who don't want to be trained, but they need to be trained anyway. and I'm talking about just the average end user. When you've got a mailroom clerk, they don't want to attend some security course. They don't care. But they're the ones who are clicking on these links in emails and getting ransomware installed and acting as that jump point for a ransomware attack to basically spiral through the inside of a network. It just takes that one weak link. And we said we need a way to create easy training that's suitable for any employee in a company, but a way to create accountability so that an employer can know that that person took that course. And that's what really created the supervisor portal. Was here's a way where an employer can log in, they can create accounts for all of their employees, and we can use CSVs and things to import them, so you can import thousands of people, and you can assign them a course. And you might not be assigning them some really high-end thing or CISSP or whatever, but just a 45-minute basic security course. You have to watch this. And now you can go and evaluate, did they watch it? How many minutes did they watch? When did they watch it? You can see that. You can assign it. And then you can kind of take that away if you don't want them to have access to that course anymore. It gives you that ability to assign out.
That's really awesome. Michael, do you have more questions along these lines?
Well, no, actually, you just started to talk about things that I was interested in. Do you then go back, Don, I've always been impressed with the way that you guys look at the analytics and the usage. So as you're doing that, are you starting to track what people are assigning or what programs people are watching more of, what they're going back to? Like, is there anything in there that's kind of surprised you as you're looking at how people are using it?
There is. I'm always surprised when people assign a course and it has a low completion rate where people aren't watching it, where whoever the employer was obviously made the effort to make this training available to people and it didn't get used. And we're working on ways to engage with those users better, to be able to reach out and say, hey, we noticed you're only 25% of the way through this show, and what's going on? Is there something we can help you with? Are you stuck on something? And try and re-engage them, keep them active in it. That's been a challenge that we've had. But I've also been surprised by like which courses are the most popular. You mentioned analytics, and in our business, there's so many different analytics that we track for different things, and some are pretty humorous. My favorite is the course of ours, which is the most stolen.
Oh, wow.
That helps us, because you want to figure out, you want to create content that's relevant to people. And sometimes your audience will tell you that. They'll say, oh, we want more of this. And sometimes they won't tell you that. They'll want more of it. You don't have it, and they just go to a competitor, right? So we always try and stay on top of that by polling our people. We have what we call our advisory committee. It's a group of, I think it's about 2,000 users now. They're all people that fill out little surveys for us every month, and it helps us kind of steer the company and make sure we're in line with what they want. But I always remember the quote from Steve Jobs. So I'm not a big Steve Jobs fan, but he did have a good quote where he said, if I listened to my customers, we wouldn't have had an iPhone.
Yep.
And, it's a wildly successful product. So sometimes you just got to go out on a limb. And we've done that a few times. I remember I had finished a show early one week and had a few extra days. And so I just asked people in the chat room what they wanted to learn about. And they said, hey, we'd like to see something on Wireshark. And so I just recorded a quick Wireshark series over the next 2 days. It's one of our more popular shows. We ended up refilming it later on.
Now, which training class is the most stolen? And is that close to what's the most popular?
My most stolen, or our most stolen show is one of mine. It's a CCNP route show, the Cisco Certified Network Professional. You have to do 3 exams, and route's the first one. And that one, for whatever reason, is like the most stolen course on our site.
Interesting.
We had to make a decision early on. I don't know if I've talked about this before. Have I talked about DRM and copy protection and all that?
No, we haven't.
So that was a business decision we had to make very early on, as we said, we're creating videos. And a lot of our users want to be able to download the video, right? And for a podcast like you guys, you want people to download. Yeah. You want it everywhere, send it out free, no big deal.
We don't have the DRM problem.
For us, it's a paid subscription. So we don't want our video just being given out for free to everybody. We need to get paid so we can keep making videos. But we didn't want to do DRM because it's a nightmare. It's such a challenge. And when you've got a customer base like ours, where a lot of them are running Linux or BSD, crazy distros and stuff, and they're not going to mess with DRM. And the reality is all DRM gets broken anyway. And now you've wasted your time and just inconvenienced your good users. So what we did, we took a different approach and said, we're not going to do DRM. Our videos are all DRM free. When you download one of our videos, you've got it. You can play it on any device because it doesn't have any protection on it. And instead, we have another company that we work with that they actually monitor the Google cache and a few other search engines, and they monitor the file sharing sites. and they catch when a file is actually being bootlegged or shared. And then they do like a DMCA takedown notice on that. So they monitor all those avenues of piracy and stop them. And that doesn't impact our regular users. Our regular users never even know that stuff happens. But it also gives us the analytics to see what is being the most stolen, which is pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Well, and I'll tell you too, I love that as a business decision. I mean, it's people have always asked me, oh, what are you going to do to protect your IP? And I've always said, well, if you give it away, you don't have to worry about it too much. And as you've pointed out, I mean, obviously you want to get paid for it. There's things I do I'd like to get paid for, but it's more of that mentality that says most of the people are good, most of the people want this, and I want to convenience them, not inconvenience them. So we're going to find a way to do that. And I love that business decision, because I think for most of the folks, they respect that. Because the other thing that I'm impressed with is you guys put forth really good quality. And you've talked before, Don, about your turnaround time, right? You just said, look, I had some extra time. I did a Wireshark thing. It's pretty popular. But you've also said before that you pay attention to stuff. And if something needs to be updated, you update it. If there's a new angle on it, you add the new angle to it. And I think that's the kind of thing that people respect. So, instead of getting slogged down in I'm going to create it once and I'm going to charge everything for it and screw everybody if it doesn't fit exactly, they're smart, they'll figure it out. I think you guys have taken a completely different approach, and it seems to be paying off pretty well. So I like that.
Yeah, and I try and tell people that all the time. Like, if they have suggestions or ideas, shoot them over to us. We have a course request list, which, people kind of vote on what to do. But I also just like to get feedback. And, I was on one of the podcasts the other week, and I mentioned to the viewers, hey, if you have any ideas, just shoot me an email. And I actually got some responses from the viewers out there, and they're telling me different things that are all good ideas, good content to jump in. We've got 5 studios. We've got a lot of staff here, and we can get that stuff created and filmed pretty quickly. Sometimes it's harder to come up with the idea than it is to actually get in there and film it.
That's I can relate to that.
See, it's so funny. I'm the person who, every time people talk about writer's block, I'm like, I don't have that. I have writer's paralysis at times because I have too much to do, but I never suffer from not enough. But, I said too, I guess, Don, I mean, I'd love to see if anybody listening now, they've got ideas for, challenges they're trying to struggle through with their startup, because I think it's the same thing. We keep looking at people in a startup, do you need to have code literacy? Do you need to understand some of these topics? And this is a great way to get in there and get your feet wet and figure out some of these things without having to be an expert on it, but learn what you need to hire in your startup, learn some of the skill sets, understand your audience a little bit better, or understand where your product fits. And so, I don't know. I always think that type of stuff is really exciting. So let's go back to the supervisor portal then. So as you guys started building it out, did you have to custom code something, or were you able to find some pre-existing stuff? Like, I guess we've not really gotten deep into how a lot of your infrastructure works, and you certainly don't need to reveal any secrets to it. But as you've looked at that, and as your library grows, and as the quality of the content grows, how much of a challenge was it to put a supervisor portal around the things that you're offering people today?
So initially, we thought it would be pretty easy, right? When we first launched the company, this is how things go, right? Our website was a WordPress site. We said, hey, why reinvent the wheel? Let's just get WordPress. And then if you want to have a learning management system, there's LMSs that are available for WordPress. And if you want to assign content, you can find that for WordPress. They're just plugins, right? And you start adding plugins and plugins and plugins. And I don't have to even say this really to a security watcher, but you guys know WordPress, it's got its own problems, and then its plugins are a freaking nightmare for security. But even there, that wasn't like we were able to secure it. We had a web application firewall and other things to make it where our WordPress site was safe, but it just wasn't scaling well performance-wise, that we were having a lot of viewers in. And one of the big things that hurts our performance on our site is when you're watching videos, your player has to phone back home to us every second or every 2 seconds so that we can resume playing the video where you left off, right? So if you're halfway through a video on your phone and you stop and you go to your desktop and you start watching, it picks up where it left off. Well, it's got to communicate back to us. And that it's a good feature. It's not like spying. It's just, we need to resume. But it generates a lot of load on the servers. And WordPress just wasn't happy with that. The databases on the back end weren't happy with that. And so ultimately, we ended up having to replace that and just move to our own in-house built system. And once we did that, we were able to use a lot of modern technologies. We used a lot of like the things that Google recommends, Node.js and Angular and technologies like that to make it where we could have optimal performance and still offer these features. But it is homegrown, a lot of the technologies that we use, and it's not what we intentionally set out to be. We don't want to be an LMS company. We want to create videos. And it just got to the point, though, where we had custom needs, and so we had to start hiring developers. We've got, what do we have now? 5 staff developers and another 4 or 5 that are contract, that are just working on making the site and our mobile apps and all that. That's stuff that we didn't think we'd need when we first launched the company, but realized pretty quick that we would.
So and now, do you use a? I'm sorry, I just had a quick question, Michael. Do you use a CDN, Don, to cache any of that content?
More than one.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
So for our image assets and stuff on the website, that goes through AWS, right? S3 is kind of the standard way for that. But for our video content, because we have viewers all over the world, if you're in, well, I'll use Australia as a great example, that we had a lot of great business, so just a lot of demand in Australia for our product, but they're so far away that a lot of them were having to come to servers that were here in the US, and that creates a really bad experience. So we started originally just using a couple of different small CDNs to be able to try and get over there. We messed with Amazon CloudFront for a little while before finally shifting over to Akami. And Akami was one of those things that I knew about them day one, but they were just too expensive. But as we grew, we got to the point where they weren't too expensive anymore, and they gave us the best experience. And so that was kind of a neat thing, that as the company grows, there's a lot of stuff that was out of our reach before that's now in our reach, and we we're able to adopt that, and that gives our users a better experience, because that's ultimately we want our users to have the best experience, and that's why we reinvest back in the company and continue to grow it and switch to technologies like that.
Yeah, customer retention is obviously important in a subscription-based service such as yourselves.
Yeah, well, and I always think it's the exciting part. So as you guys have found yourselves now with staff developers and contract developers and taking on some stuff that maybe you didn't think you'd have to, has that then all of a sudden now you need to have a product roadmap and you need to think about what's going to happen 6 months down the road? Like, has that changed any of the planning on the way that you guys have thought about things? And has it been a pleasant surprise, or is it more of a, nope, this is how we grow? It just is.
I would say it's been both pleasant and unpleasant. We had meetings early on, our vision for the company, and we said, look, if we create training videos, there's only so many videos we can make in a year. And once we make them and we put them on a site and we sell them to a customer, it doesn't matter if we have 10,000 customers or 10 million customers. The way we create is really all the same. So when we drew a kind of wish list org chart, we came up with about 25 positions that we figured we'll need about 25 staff members to run this company and to be able to do everything that we need to do, and it really wouldn't need to grow any larger than that. But as we started dealing with corporate accounts, we realized that we needed specialized people to deal with corporate accounts, and we needed developers, and we needed marketers, and our needs kind of grew. And now here we are, we're at 42 employees. And you look back at that 25 number, and you're like, how do we think we could even get by with that? And we're sitting at 42, and I can tell you we probably need another 10 already. It's that constant growth, and it's because of all the different needs and things we didn't anticipate. As
a nerd, Don, you want to stay at 42 for obvious reasons, don't you?
The meaning of life.
That's right.
So that's one thing, though, that's definitely changed over the time of our company as we've grown, and we moved into a new building, and we were almost we were worried when we moved in that we'd need to lease out space to take care of the parts of the building we weren't going to use, and now we've kind of filled our space. We need more room again.
Yeah. Now, Don, are you responsible for managing and leading the developers?
No. So in the early days I was, but as we've grown, I can only do so much. And so now we have levels, and we actually have Angie Byers, who is a project manager who is extremely detail oriented and talented. And so she is the one that is basically managing the dev team's priorities and the work that's being done. And then we have what we call our fractional CTO, Scott. He's with a company called Flipstone. And we use him on a contract basis to actually, be the true manager of that dev team. We found that we really needed somebody who truly understood software development lifecycle. It's a different world. You know, that when you have Agile or Waterfall or XP or all the different management styles there, it's easy to lose track of whether a developer is actually, one, doing as much work as they can, and two, writing clean code that's secure and safe. You know, because that's a challenge. We can't have bad code make it to the site because that affects the user experience, and all of a sudden you start losing users. That's something we don't want.
Do you still get involved with the technology decisions? You mentioned Node.js and Angular, and that presents challenges for old folks like us to try and learn, and not necessarily learn and be proficient in these new frameworks, but learn it enough so that we can drive design and development in the lifecycle.
So I do. I try not to micromanage, and I try not to get involved in the minutiae. I don't know how to use Node.js myself, so I don't want to, right? But I am a member of those meetings, and at a minimum, I'm just listening. But I want to provide feedback because sometimes I've got experience. I've got things that I've seen in the past, and if I could help us avoid a mistake, I want to be there to help with that. And that's something that initially I started distancing myself from that and realized it was a mistake. That while I'm not involved in the day-to-day part of the dev team, I should at least be aware of the decisions we're making. And anytime we change a back-end product, we're actually going through a big back-end change right now where we've outgrown our CRM. And so we're moving over to Salesforce and NetSuite, which is a huge conversion.
Oh, yeah.
And if you make a mistake there, it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and through your consulting, you've seen companies make a lot of mistakes in those large migrations, I bet. Back in the day, it was actually on actual hardware, and you had to configure and install the software in databases, right? That's your background.
Yeah, and I've made mistakes myself. You know, it's how we learn. Hopefully, we learn from somebody else's mistakes.
Right.
But, you know, a misconfigured database, you can find that sometimes it doesn't even need hardware. They're just reconfiguring it. You could double your performance. And so that's how pretty much any product can be.
It's so true, especially with databases, doing the performance tuning. It's very, very small changes that at scale have large impacts. And sometimes it's difficult to find out